And that didn't work, did it? Yeah, so Janet, thanks for coming on. I tell you, I get so many people ask me, can you use this for dogs? Can you use it for horses? Can you use it for cats? And there's so much conflicting information out there about, can't use tea tree on cats, they say, because of liver enzymes. And honestly, it's so confusing. So I thought what we'd do, have a chat with you, see if we can get you onto the class and clear a few things up for us, if that's okay. So for those that don't know Janet, Janet is also known as the Essential Oil Vet, and dialing in with us from Austin in Texas. And I believe you've been a vet now for about 14 years, I think. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is hand over to you, if you don't mind.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I do live in Texas, so sometimes I'll throw out a little y'all or whatever. And I'm really, really adaptable. So adaptability is one of my top 5 strengths. So if you guys have questions, go ahead and post them in the chat. I will have a section, hopefully a little bit of time after I'm done for some Q&A. I don't know how long you guys usually have your classes, but I don't mind staying on longer if there are a bunch of questions. So Dave, I know I told you I didn't have a PowerPoint, but I have a PowerPoint. So I put one together super quick. Some of it's not going to be relevant, so do not be offended if I skip slides. Okay, you guys, so work with me a little bit. So I just got back from my last appointment, and so you get me with a braid instead of getting my hair done. I didn't have time for a shower before our class, so luckily you can't smell on Zoom, so maybe that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. It's bad if you're sharing essential oils, I guess, right? So let me pull up my screen and share it with y'all. Oh, see, there was my little y'all. Can you guys see? Can you guys see my screen, Dave? Okay. Okay, I am going to play it as a slideshow, so I'm not gonna be able to see the chats right away, but I will be able to get in there after I do my presentation. Okay, actually, maybe I will. Let me see. It's blinking at me, so awesome. Okay. So that's me in my first case. So I'm Dr. Jane O'Rourke. Like Dave said, I am a veterinarian in Austin, Texas. I've been here for about 10 years. I have my own practice, which is called Hill Country Mobile Veterinary Service. So I go around to different people's homes and farms. And this is Louis. He was my first case. I could probably talk about this case for about a half an hour, but really quickly, he had chronic sinusitis and was a difficult case. We had to put him on antibiotics every 2 to 3 months. And then about 6 months after I started using essential oils for myself, and I started using them because I have stress in my life and I was dealing with chronic migraines. And past tense, do you guys like past tense? That one really, really was my my gateway oil. So about 6 months after I started using them in my family and with my own animals and my husband, who is hairy enough to be an animal, believe it or not, but I had a call from Louie's owner, and she really didn't want to do antibiotics again. We had to do injectable antibiotics because he wouldn't eat them in his food, in his grain. And I was like, well, we have lots of oils that are antibacterial in properties, and we know that his sinusitis is bacterial because it's responsive to antibiotics. So why don't we try some? And if it doesn't work, we can always throw him on antibiotics tomorrow. And she was like, yes, let's try it. And so this is me doing my first session with him. It actually does get cold in Texas. So I was wearing a scarf. And throughout the course of the session, it took about a half an hour, 45 minutes. His nose started draining, and there was like this giant puddle of mucus on the ground at the end of it. It was like about a foot wide. So I was like, that is super gross and super awesome. And it was running clear. And I called back the next day, and his nose was totally fine. He didn't have a runny nose anymore. And then he went 6 months without needing anything again. And this was after about 3 years of every 2 to 3 months having to put him on antibiotics. And so we went back, did another session on him after about 6 months. And that was 5 years ago. And he hasn't had to have any antibiotics and hasn't had another bout of sinusitis since then. So I remember driving away that day thinking, well, I guess I use essential oils in my practice now. It's a really cool case. So today, if I can get this to go, we are going to talk about how to use essential oils with animals. We're going to cover some safety information, some specific topics that Dave requested I cover that are some pretty common questions and issues I get. And then we're going to answer some questions. Now, forewarning, as you can tell, I'm super non-compliant in these talks. So I just ask that you please do not share this recording on social media. I really don't want to get kicked out of doTERRA. Okay, thanks. So we use oils when maybe our current approach to health is not getting the results we want. We don't want to use toxic chemicals all the time. We're overwhelmed with all the natural options out there. We're a little bit confused about what to use. Maybe we want to be empowered and maybe not to have to run to the veterinarian for every little thing. And I think all of you guys already use doTERRA, right? It's a team call, Dave? Okay, cool.
Yep, we do, yeah.
So we're going to skip this. As you guys know, we do have, doTERRA does have a veterinary advisory board now. These are my amazing colleagues, and of course me, all over North America. I'm in Austin, Dr. Frezzo's in New Jersey, Dr. Fisher's up in Canada, Dr. McCaskill's in Louisiana, and we'll forgive him for that. And then Dr. Yamamoto is in California, and she actually just started her own hospice practice. She broke off of her regular practice to start a hospice practice. Pretty amazing. And so we meet monthly like this via Zoom, and we discuss a lot of things that I can't talk about because I signed a non-disclosure agreement. But we are mainly here to advise doTERRA on the safe and effective use of their oils in homes with animals or on animals. And my printer is calibrating, so I apologize for the noise. So how do you use essential oils with animals? This is Lucy. She is the best dog in the world if you saw convention, and she's my baby dog. She really is the best dog in the world. Sorry for everyone out there who has dogs and you don't have the best dog in the world, because I do. So she's amazing. So we use essential oils the same way as we use them with people. So we use them aromatically, topically, and internally. Aromatically, these are just some of the options that you can use. You can diffuse it into the air. You can put it in a spray bottle. You can use direct inhalation. And when you do that, what you would do is just put a drop on your hand, rub your hands together, present your hands to the animal, and let them get as close or as far away from your hand as they need to be able to smell it. You can put it on a cloth, on their bedding, hot water and steam, and you can use a tenting method for that. Humidifier, just be careful that it is one that is safe to use essential oils with. You don't want to be melting any of the plastic in humidifiers, so it has to be one that's approved for use with essential oils. And then you can always use, put them on a fan or in your air filter. I don't know if you guys have central air out there. Well, you guys are all over the world. So if you live in a hot area like I do, we have central air. And so we put essential oils on our air filters. Topically, the main thing you want to remember with small animals, which is dogs, cats, reptiles, birds, hamsters, gerbils, hedgehogs, whatever you have that's little, you want to dilute. So if you get nothing else out of this presentation today, just remember, dilute your oils. They are strong, and our little guys have very strong senses of smell. And so we want to make sure we don't overpower them with the oils. And especially for those of us that use essential oils all the time, all day long, and put it in our water and do all of that stuff, we get a little bit desensitized to the smell of the oils. And so sometimes we think, oh, maybe it's not that strong, but it's really because we've been desensitized to that smell. And so our animals don't get as desensitized to them and are still very sensitive to essential oil smells. So, oops. Let's see. Topically, you can do a direct application. Primarily, what we do is we pet it along the spine. You can use massage or reflexology points. Ear tipping is really common, especially if you have a double-coated breed, like the northern breeds or corgis. Really hard to get through that thick, dense undercoat. So using the ear tips is a really good, easy way to use oils topically directly to the area of interest, particularly if you have like a lump or a bump or a scratch or a scrape and you want to put it directly on there. In their shampoo is an excellent way to get oils onto your animals. Hot and cold compresses are a really common way I use them in my practice. So, you just take 2 cups of either hot or cold water, depending on which one you're doing, 1 or 2 drops of essential oil in there, take a cotton cloth, dip it in there, wring it out, and then just hold it over the area. The heat or the cold is actually very therapeutic as well. And then, of course, roller bottles and spray bottles, which is probably the most common method you guys are familiar with. And then internally, we want to make sure that we're limiting the oils to 1 or 2 drops at a time. You can mix it with food or grain. You can put it in a capsule topped off with carrier oil. With horses, you can put it in a dosing syringe, or goats or cattle. You can put it in a dosing syringe and then give it like you would like a dewormer. And when you want to apply it, add it to your drinking water, you can definitely do 1 drop per 2 cups of drinking water. The problem is the oil sits on top of the water. And so if you can, use a dispersant. And then, of course, you can make a natural toothpaste. Safety, remember, you guys are going to get a lot of dilution recommendations here. So I usually recommend a 1 to 5% dilution with small animals, depending on what oil it is and the size of the animal and what we're dealing with. With cats, you want to just stick with a 1% dilution. You're probably going to be safe for topical use. With horses, they're pretty good with using horses, cattle, goats, and even hogs. You can use oils neat like you would with people, but you would want to dilute some oils like oregano, thyme, clove, cinnamon. The really hot oils can cause some skin sensitivity, even with horses, and especially if they're thin-skinned horses like thoroughbreds. Let's see. So there's different carrier oils you can use: fractionated coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, almond oil, all good choices. Lots of good choices out there for that. I always recommend doTERRA's fractionated coconut oil because it's not as greasy as some of the other stuff out there. You can also use the new Yarrow Palm Serum as a dilution, as a carrier oil if and when that stuff comes out, actually. So I don't know if you guys will get that over there. But I got some in my convention kit. So you can just remember that you can always increase the concentration if you're not getting the results you need. But once you apply an oil, it's really difficult to remove it once it's already been absorbed. So every animal is an individual, and your pet might be more sensitive than others. Just observe their behavior and they will tell you. And this is Logan. He's my little Scottish Terrier dog. May he rest in peace. He's no longer with us, but I just love this photo of him in our blue bonnets, which is the state flower here in Texas. All right, self-selection. So how to have an animal choose which oils to use. So the example I like to use is calming, right? So we have a lot of issues with our animals these days with stress and anxiety, separation anxiety, thunderstorm anxiety. They don't like fireworks. They don't like loud noises. They don't like your brother when they come over, whatever. So we have a lot of oils that are really, really good at calming, like a lot. You could do Roman chamomile or lavender or serenity or balance or adaptive, the new one, or peace or console or copaiba. There's so many different calming oils, right? So how do you know which one to use? With us, it's like, oh, I really love copaiba, I'm just going to grab that one. Or, oh, a peace is what I feel like today, I'm just feeling the peace vibe, right? So with animals, they can choose too. So they actually are really good at kind of letting you know what is the best for them. And when you introduce it, you just introduce it initially with the cap on like this. Okay, don't take it off. They can still smell it, I promise. And then just present the oil to the animal with the cap on. Their positive responses might be subtle, but if you're observant, they will tell you. And if you're not sure if they're going to be sensitive to a new oil, start out with just diffusing it for about 15-20 minutes. And if they're like sleeping right by the diffuser, that's probably a good one to use. if they're running out of the room, as soon as you start cracking it open, that's probably one that they don't like. So just be observant and they'll tell you. So I do have a couple of videos that I think will help a lot in this. I know it's going to take up a little bit of our time, but bear with me. So this is a dog that has separation anxiety. Her name's Bella. She's my sister's dog, actually, and she was visiting me. I was taking care of her for the first time, and so this is a couple years ago, so I apologize for the quality of the video, but it's a good example of separation anxiety and an oil that can help. So I tried several of the different calming oils that we had at the time with her, and she's panting. She's she loves her Auntie Janet, but she is stressed out. So she's panting, not because it's hot. She's in the air conditioning. She hadn't been running around or anything like that. It's bedtime. And I'm like, I cannot sleep with you being so stressed out. So let's try some calming oils. And she had never had oils before. So I'll just show you what she did. So this is, she smelled it and then she kind of turned away from it. That's a no response for a dog, for this particular dog. And that's another, she smelled it and this just kind of turned away. So that's a no. And that's a yes response. So she's smelling it and licking the bottle and really likes it. She didn't turn away from it. That was Roaming Chamomile. And at this point, she's kind of like, dude, I just told you what oil I wanted. Why do you keep showing me more oils? But for the sake of the video, I made her smell it. That one was kind of a maybe. She didn't turn away from it like the rest of them. That one, she's like, nope, that's Clary Calm. I was like, Clary Calm? But she's spayed, so she definitely didn't have any hormonal issues at the time. She's like, no, thank you. So that is, so we ended up doing Balance and Roaming Chamomile with her. I applied it topically, and about 5 minutes later, she fell asleep. So it was awesome. Worked really, really well. And here's one with a cat. I know there's a lot of controversy around cats and essential oils. They actually can tolerate them really well. They're just small, and you have to dilute them properly, like we talked about, right? Oh, did that one not go? Let's see if I can get it to play. Okay, so this is Lyra. She has asthma and epilepsy and a heart murmur. So that's a yes for response with the cat. She's rubbing her face on it. She likes it. And notice I'm presenting it to her when she's very calm. She's relaxed. There's another yes response. Not as strong of one, but she's like, yeah, that one's pretty good. I like that one too. And there's your no response with a cat. So she turned her head away. It's pretty obvious. She was like, nope, please get that out of my face. Thanks anyway. But you don't always have to get that close. I did that with this video, but sometimes they can smell it from pretty far away and they'll let you know. So was that helpful?
That was brilliant. Yes. Thanks.
Okay, great. So let's see. I have a bunch of like cases. Do you want me to go through that, or do you want me to just talk about the stuff that you want me to talk about, Dave?
No, go for it. I mean, we've got time. That's fine.
Okay, cool. So frankincense, it's basically like I go through the top 10 oils that I use with animals. I'm not going to go through all of them, but frankincense is one that, so for those of you that don't know, Dave asked me to cover joint support, seizures, stroke, anxiety, separation anxiety, which we did a little bit, and cancer. Now, frankincense is good for like 90% of those things. So it is really good for healthy cellular function. So it is an anti-cancer, anti-tumoral oil, great for skin health. It's amazing for seizures. It is excellent for basically the whole nervous system. So it's good for strokes as well. It's actually a little bit blood thinning. So it's actually really good for strokes. In addition to helichrysum, yarrow palm, and cypress. And then I also use fennel, basil, and cedarwood after a stroke to help with the ischemia and things like that. So, but frankincense is an amazing one for joint issues as well. I basically use this one for everything. This and Copaiba. So if you follow me on Facebook, you can and watch my weekly Q&As. You'll notice I'm kind of a little bit of a broken record because I usually recommend frankincense and Copaiba for everything. But that's how good they work, and I've just had success after success after success with these two oils. With joint support, well, I'll cover joint support in a little bit, but this is a little dog that had a cyst, and you can see the owner wasn't real consistent about putting it on, but about a month after they started applying it, the cyst was totally gone. This is a horse that had a fight with a T-post. Sorry about the graphic images. If you have kids around, please look away. So we couldn't close that up, but you can see with some frankincense spray, it healed up very nicely, even with that gigantic gaping wound. And then I do have some studies in here. You can see that frankincense is effective against pancreatic cancer, and this is in an animal model that they did. So they injected cancer cells into, I believe, rodents, and found it to be effective. So Digestin is the one that, it's not really one that Dave wanted me to cover, but I just love this oil because every animal has digestive issues. And do you guys have Terrazyme over there in Europe?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so if you have dogs, they should all be on Terrazyme twice a day. Okay, so it's just an amazing digestive enzyme, and there's commercial ones out there that are pretty good, but nothing compares to Terrazyme. I think it's amazing. And then of course Digestin for all things digestive, On Guard to support the immune system. And this one is the study from 2010 that shows that it's effective against the influenza virus. And for those of you that don't know, the way it works is that it doesn't kill viruses. I know a lot of times people are like, well, the oils can get through the cell membrane and you can get to the internal part of the cell, which they can, and it does. This oil does do that. But what they found was that On Guard actually stopped that virus from reproducing, and so that the natural immunity, the macrophages, could come and clean up those cells that do have the virus in them. So that's why it's so important that when you start to get that scratchy throat or start to feel gross, that you start using these oils immediately, because once that virus replicates too much, your body is still going to have to come and clean up all those cells that are affected, but the On Guard will stop it from reproducing right away. So starting it right away is really important when it comes to On Guard. Lavender is one that's an amazing one for anxiety and stress. It's one of our calming oils. It's also a really good antihistamine. So allergies are really common with animals, and I don't think I have my allergy protocol here, but it is another one that Dave wanted me to cover. So with lavender, with allergies, this is a dog that got into something and had an allergic response, and it was like an acute allergic response. He's a yellow lab and his face swelled up. We have a million things in Texas that dogs can be allergic to. So his owner called me up and was like, what do I do? And I'm like, put on some lavender. And she put a drop of lavender and a teaspoon of carrier oil and just kind of like massaged it all over his face, just making sure not to get it in his eyes. And she took this picture about 15 minutes later. She said it went down in less than 10. It was pretty acute, amazing response. And this prevented her from having to go take an emergency trip to the veterinarian and possibly him not making it if his airway closed up or something like that. So a really cool example of lavender just being really effective, and how you really just need to have it on hand so you can use it. If you don't have it, waiting 3 days to get it makes it a lot harder, which is why everyone who has animals really needs to have essential oils in their home. doTERRA essential oils being, of course, the only essential oils I use and recommend. But it's also really good for itchy skin. And for allergies, I use a combination of lemon, lavender, peppermint, frankincense, and copaiba internally. And so if you have a really small dog, less than 20 pounds, you can put in like 2 drops of each of those in a 5 milliliter bottle and give 1 drop of that mixture twice a day. If you have a large dog like Chubbs here, is a good 85-pound lab, he could have 1 drop of each of those in a capsule twice a day, up to 3 times a day, really, to help manage allergies and itchy skin. With allergies, it's extremely complicated, and usually I put them on an omega-3 supplement. Like you can use the Kids IQ Mega. I usually put them on a raw diet usually is very helpful. A ketogenic diet or a raw diet is often very helpful. Limited ingredient diets are often helpful. Giving them digestive enzymes, so supporting gut health. Anything wrong with your gut manifests in the skin, and that's true with people, it's true with animals, particularly with dogs. So if there's gut issues, it's going to manifest in the skin with itchy skin and hot spots and all this stuff. And so supporting the gut is so important, which is why I have Digestin as like my number 2 oil, and why we talked about Terrazyme. So getting that Terrazyme is really important. Getting them on a probiotic that's appropriate for dogs or cats or whoever. Horses do really, really well with a prebiotic and probiotic. And then you can also apply balance topically along the spine. Now, if you have hot spots or things like that, I like to do a combination of lavender, frankincense, and myrrh, and I do 10 drops of each in a 15 milliliter bottle. Top it off with a little bit of colloidal silver and aloe vera juice, and you can spray it right on that hot spot. It works really, really well. So, okay, there's another awesome anti-inflammatory and antihistamine activities of lavender. Melaleuca is really controversial. I don't recommend you use it with small animals. There's just lots of other oils you can use instead that are a lot safer. This is metabolized really, really slowly with cats and dogs. So I have seen toxicity with this. It is an amazing oil for things like ringworm and MRSA, and that's what this one is, this article. Now, deep blue polyphenol. Let's talk. Deep blue polyphenol complex capsules are amazing for dogs over 40 pounds. So these are big, like it's got a lot of herbs and stuff in them. So you don't want to give them to very small dogs. Although I have had people like break it open and use like a third of a capsule with their little dogs very effectively. It's very safe. So this is my favorite one for joint issues, and the new turmeric duo caps for dogs over 40 pounds, that in combination with the deep blue polyphenols, like you can totally get them off of all non-steroidals with this stuff. It's amazing. The other thing I use for joint issues is, so copaiba, frankincense, turmeric orally. I use the deep blue polyphenols, an omega-3 supplement. So a little bit of a broken record, right? Omega-3 is digestive enzyme. Balance topically is really good. I use AromaTouch diluted, massage that over affected joints. And veterinary acupuncture, of course, is excellent as well. And those are kind of what I use for joint issues in senior dogs, or active dogs that maybe have had like a cruciate ligament tear or something like that, where they have some ongoing issues. Oregano is kind of like our heavy hitter. I use that as an antibiotic. That's the first oil I use with Louis for his sinusitis. Super powerful, and also very good for fungal and bacterial urinary tract infections. Balance is my number one favorite oil of all time. I use this as like my first oil in every protocol. So you've heard me talk about it several times already today. It's also very, very good for anxiousness. So since we talked about that, it's also extremely good for seizures. So for anxiety, we talked about some of the calming oils. We have lots of them. So like lavender, balance, serenity, copaiba, peace, console, vetiver, roaming chamomile. All of those are excellent for anxiety. I would do self-selection. So self-selection with animals when it comes to anxiety is really helpful. If they're scared, if they're fearful, then adding in things like bergamot and patchouli for those emotional support oils are really helpful as well for anxiety, separation anxiety or storm anxiety or anything like that. For seizures in particular, we like to use, I use frankincense, I use copaiba internally 2 to 3 times a day, every day to prevent them. And then I use balance topically once a day. And this is already diluted, you guys, so you don't have to dilute it more. It's a wonderful oil. It's perfectly made. I don't know what doTERRA did with their magical people up there that are so good at coming up with blends, but this one is just an amazing, amazing blend. Now, a lot of people are like, well, what about the new Adaptive? Is that better than Balance? And my answer to that is no, there's nothing better than Balance. But Adaptive is really, really good for dogs that have separation anxiety. We've already started to see some that the Balance wasn't enough or the Serenity wasn't enough, but Adaptive was really the extra thing that they needed. And those new Adaptive soft gels, do I have some in here? Yeah, these guys, I use them a lot because I'm stressed out a lot. I don't know if you could tell. But I should have taken one before this because this is stressful trying to do all this in 30 minutes, Dave. I can't believe you only gave me 30 minutes. You're as bad as Emily, right? So these ones you can give to dogs as long as they're not on an SSRI or gabapentin. Gabapentin is the other one because it's got GABA in it, and we don't want to take up those receptors with other things. So, and the SSRI things like Prozac and things like that. Those antidepressant type drugs. So, we were talking about seizures, and I got off on a tangent with anxiety. So we're good on anxiety. You guys good with that? Good with that? Okay. So seizures. We were talking about frankincense, copaiba, balance, and then oils to avoid if you have a seizure animal, an animal with epilepsy. Avoid fennel, basil, wintergreen, rosemary, camphor, eucalyptus, clary sage, black pepper, and anything that has those oils in it. Okay, so that's my list for that, and you can find that online pretty much anywhere. And the other thing, cedarwood's another really good calming oil. So, and that's really important with seizures. The other thing with seizures is there are a lot of flea and tick preventatives now that have been proven to cause seizures. So be careful which flea and tick prevention you are using. That's a big key as well. And veterinarians are still prescribing these things, which makes me as a veterinarian insane. So I'm like, there's lots of safe ones out there, but they're still prescribing the ones that cause seizures. Then they're wondering why we have an increase in seizures in our animals. So that's Balance. TerraShield, this is our flea and tick repellent. We now have citronella and lemon eucalyptus, which you can add to that for added effect, particularly if you have mosquitoes. Copaiba, we've talked about a ton. It's so good for all of these things. Every single system in the body is affected with copaiba. I have so many amazing testimonies with this particular oil, with separation anxiety. I just had one yesterday that was a horse that had oral plaques, so those white plaques in their ears that she'd been using copaiba every once in a while, like on it. And she went and checked the horse's ears yesterday, and they were gone because she's been using copaiba. So it took about a year, but she was probably only applying it maybe once a week, so if that. And then this one talks about the anti-tumoral effects of copaiba with melanoma. This is another injury example. So this dog was bit by another dog. And this was that recipe that I told you about with myrrh, frankincense, and lavender, and how effective it was at healing that. And it's also very good for hot spots. So a little bit more on safety. If you do happen to have an adverse reaction, something like drooling or squinting, or they're rubbing their face, or maybe your kid dumped a whole bottle of something on them that was really inappropriate, you want to try and get it off of them as quickly as possible, so you can give them a quick bath with a detergent type soap. Like I usually use like a dish soap, and then just make sure you rinse it out really well, and then dilute it with carrier oil, obviously, to try and decrease the absorption of that. If you do have an adverse reaction, most of them resolve within 24 to 48 hours. And skin irritation is the most common, although that's pretty rare. And then the oils we want to avoid with dogs are birch, melaleuca, which is tea tree oil, and wintergreen. And then use caution with the hot oils. So cassia is one that tends to be a little more common this time of year as we start to get into the cooler weather. But it is one that does cause some irritation when it's diffused with certain dogs that are super sensitive. Cinnamon and clove, less so, but still one to be careful of. I mean, don't put 10 drops of cinnamon in your diffuser, guys, or clove or cassia. You know, if you do have a diffuser blend that calls for that, 1 or 2 drops is usually enough in your diffuser. With cats, it's the mint oil, so spearmint, wintergreen, peppermint is hit or miss. Some cats are totally fine with it. And the reason why I have the mints on here is not because of a toxicity or anything like that. It's just that a lot of cats, especially in the US, have these, they're kind of born with a respiratory infection. So kittens, you know, come in regularly with like the eye goop and like snotty noses, and they get these respiratory infections when they're young kittens. And so they have this kind of like low underlying respiratory disease that doesn't really manifest itself except for when you diffuse a strong mint oil, and then they start to get a little bit gaspy or get a little bit of asthma because of that. And so that's why these oils are on here. And these are more for topical use, but certainly if you're diffusing 10 drops of this, it might cause an issue as well, especially if you leave the door closed. So always leave the room door open when you're diffusing with your animals so that they can leave. Birch, melaleuca, and of course the same caution with hot oil. And that is the end of my PowerPoint. So I do have a little bit of a cancer protocols to go through with you, but if you want to learn more from me, check me out on Facebook. I am on I'm the Essential Oil Vet on Facebook and Instagram. Super creative name there, I know. I'm a scientist, not a creative, okay? And then and then I do have a membership group. This is for everyone who loves the oils. If you want to be a part of that, it's $10 US monthly, and you can join or leave whenever you want. It's just through PayPal. You just go to essentialoilvet.com/member, and I would love to have you all in there. Now I'm going to stop my screen share and see if there's questions. You guys can unmute too.
Yeah, no, that was absolutely fantastic. I'll tell you, one of my dogs had a stroke a while ago, about 2 years ago, and the vet came out and said to me outside, "I don't think she's going to make it." And we started putting frankincense just on the spine. Within 2 days, she was off the sofa, out going for a pee by herself, and that was 2 years ago. So it's absolutely amazing stuff.
That's amazing. Yeah. And that's why it's like, aren't you so glad you had it and you didn't have to wait for it to ship, right? And it's just like, if the problem with strokes is that if you don't address it right away, it's kind of like that dog with the swollen face, right? If you don't address it right away, then it can cause more permanent damage because of that ischemia in the brain. And that frankincense is so wonderful. Yeah. So yeah, I did have one question that somebody was asking me to talk about parrots. And so I didn't talk about birds very much because I don't get a lot of bird patients. But birds do have air sacules as well as lungs, and it makes them very, very sensitive as far as their respiratory tract to pretty much anything. So the rule or the general idea with birds is that you can diffuse around them. They love citrus oils. Oh, parrots love citrus oils when you're diffusing. Balance, they love balance. So you can put a drop of balance on their perch. It's so amazing. So for parrots though, and birds in general, you want to make sure that your diffuser is away from their enclosure if they can't get out of the room, or maybe just diffuse in a separate room because their respiratory tracts are really sensitive. That being said, chickens are also birds, and they're super tough when it comes to oils. You can like dump oils on those guys and give it to them in their water. Actually parrots can really benefit from that as well. I usually recommend like 1 drop per liter or gallon of water. So just a very small amount when you're applying it that way. And then just be really careful with the hot oils around those guys.
Okay, brilliant.
Fran says, I use On Guard for my cat's conjunctivitis and it cleared up in 24 hours. That is awesome. Yes, I love On Guard. It's super great for everything.
Okay, a dog currently have blood clots on the legs.
On the legs, blood clots, like in the legs, or like skin irritations.
Not too sure. An overweight cat. Oh, in the legs.
In the legs. Okay, so so that would be the same oils as a stroke. So a stroke is actually blood clot in the brain that causes ischemia, and so you start to see those neurologic symptoms because of that. But the oils that are really good for any kind of like blood clotting, yarrow palm is excellent, especially for the integrity of the vessel walls. So if that's an issue where it's causing like little bleeds, yarrow palm's really good for that. Helichrysum and cypress are also really good for those things. And then I really like to use cedarwood, basil, and fennel for that. Let's see. Good question. What's the next one, Dave? I might have you just read them for me.
Loads. But I'm afraid we're kind of running out of time. We've got quite a bit to get through. So, I mean, what I suggest is, anybody that's interested, come onto your site and certainly, subscribe to your membership.
Absolutely. Yes. A lot of these I do cover in my membership, and you can always ask questions in the membership group if it's not answered already. So you can search it, find your answer. If it's not asked, then you can absolutely ask the question and go from there. So lots of thank yous. Awesome. You're welcome. Canine senility. So we call that canine cognitive disorder, which is kind of the same as like Alzheimer's in people. And that is the oils that I use for that are Balance and Serenity, especially at bedtime. And then making sure that you're supplementing them with a really good vitamin. Sometimes they're just lacking in vitamins. And then, frankincense and copaiba are also excellent choices for older animals with dealing with those kind of like neurologic downfalls as they get older. Or sundowner syndrome is another one that they get where they get really active at nighttime when they're supposed to be sleeping. Bushra says, are citrus oils toxic to cats? No, they're not. Not doTERRA's oils anyways. But I don't use them topically with cats. But diffusing them around cats is 100% okay. I love citrus oils. I diffuse them constantly around my home. And you saw that the Lyra, the one we did the self-selection with, she was 18. And she did fine for years and years of diffusing citrus oils. So, all right. I think that is all the time we have.
Yeah.
Did I miss any?
Yeah, I think we've got kind of 15 minutes left, and got a couple of things to get through as well. But listen,
it's not all about Dr. Roark today. I'm so sad.
You've already teased some of the oils that you've got that we haven't got here yet. So
thank you guys so much for your time. And seriously, please come join me on the membership group. I really enjoyed my time here. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you got something out of it. And even if it was just like one nugget, probably super worth it, right?
Absolutely. Thanks.